Well, we're off. Leaving Waterloo.
At the beginning of September, Harry, Manley and myself undertook a mammoth 250-mile bike ride along with 13 other riders, all in the aid of archaeology and fundraising.
So we've crossed M25, we've gone through Trentwood, and now we're heading through the Essex countryside, heading towards Billericay.
It's 8:30 in the evening and we've just reached Harwich International Port. Whoop whoop! Next stop, the Netherlands.
Our journey took us from Waterloo Station in London, across the North Sea, through the Netherlands into Belgium, and concluded at the iconic memorial of the Lion's Mound, which stands on the battlefield of Waterloo.
We're on the deck of the ferry heading into the Hook of Holland. We're going to start our cycle ride day 2, heading towards Rouge.
The aim was to raise funds for Waterloo Uncovered, a charity which combines world-class archaeology with veteran care and recovery, while also getting to see some of their incredible work firsthand.
Views, beautiful conditions.
On June the 18th, 1815, the Duke of Wellington led an Allied army consisting of British, Dutch and German troops against Napoleon's French army. The battle raged for 10 hours, seeing 50,000 men killed or wounded, before the Prussian army, led by Field Marshal Blucher, arrived, tipping the scales in favour of Wellington.
Well, this is it. It's the start of day 3. We're in Bruges.
Beautiful Bruges.
And then past Brussels, on to Lion's Mound.
The iconic Lion's Mound.
Morning. That was pretty.
Well, hey guys, we've made it.
Waterloo Uncovered have been conducting excavations across the battlefield since 2015, so after concluding our journey, we visited this year's dig being undertaken by them at Mont Saint-Jean. Here, Harry took the opportunity to catch up with Abby Boyle, the CEO of Waterloo Uncovered, to find out more about the charity's work.
Abby, tell us why have we actually done this?
Well, thank you very much. And first and foremost, thank you to you and all your colleagues who have been on this cycle ride today. So Waterloo Uncovered is a charity and we actually support veterans in their recovery through practical archaeology. So the site that you can see behind you today is the excavation site at Mont Saint-Jean, where this year in 2024 we have brought 5 UK beneficiaries, that's veterans and serving military personnel, to work alongside a professional team of archaeologists as they learn the skills and the ability to understand the heritage site that they're working on. So the money that you have been raising over the last 3 days with your amazing efforts of pedal power is raising funds directly that supports our activities here. Our archaeological season, which is over 2 weeks at Mont Saint-Jean, and as I say, with about up to about 40 and 50 people on site, a huge team of volunteers, archaeologists, to support not only our UK veterans, but we're also delighted to be joined this year by veterans from the Netherlands, from Belgium, and also from the US.
Fantastic. So our effort, our hard work is directly contributing to this project and actually wider with a series of sets of veterans as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So any of the money that you raise will not only pay for our excavation, but Waterloo Uncovered is also an education charity. So we do archaeology, veteran and serving military personnel recovery, but also education. So the interesting things that we find from here, it's about how we bring those finds and use those finds to help veterans beyond the battlefield. So we have a range of other programs, ones like the Finds program that we've run recently in the Midlands, our Battlefields Uncovered program, which we do online, which extends that reach really about the objects that we find here at Waterloo, so closely linked to the heritage of our military and serving personnel. And we use those objects and finds in that education process for them, for perhaps those that can't come with us, but we bring Waterloo to them.
Fantastic. It's genuinely humbling actually arriving here at site, and I know I was really overwhelmed when I came here, and in our little crew as well. We were like, God, we're here. This is incredible. And we've got a great little medal here, and actually just seeing the trenches open as an archaeologist is fantastic as well, because I know how much what we've done really supports this. So
yeah.
Thank you for hosting us. It's been fantastic.
It's been our pleasure, and we're so glad that you've been able to make it, see the archaeology in practice and meet some of our veteran beneficiaries. So we were delighted, and we can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
As rewarding as our bike ride was, we all know that it's the archaeology that we really want to know about. Fortunately for us, Time Team Sam Wilson has been participating on the project since its early days, so we asked him to give us an overview of what this year's excavations have focused on.
So we first came to the site here in 2019, and it was a metal detector signal that led us here in the first place. That signal turned out to be a series of ammunition tins from cartridge boxes dumped in a ditch. Alongside that, we managed to locate several amputated limbs, which was the result of surgery from the field hospital that was within the buildings here at Mont Saint-Jean. Fast forward to 2022, we expanded that area. Not only did we find more amputated limbs, but we found a complete human skeleton as well, someone who'd been killed or at least died of their wounds during the battle. They were similarly buried in that ditch. Coming up the trench, we found 3 horses which had been sadly wounded in the battle and then dispatched with a bullet to the head. That was where we left the story in 2022. Fast forward to 2024, we've now expanded this trench to the large trench that you can see behind me. A series of horses, you can see the skeletons behind me. Not only horses, but also a cow. We think that the cow probably was butchered after the battle and eaten. But perhaps some of the horses were also butchered and eaten after the battle. But certainly they all seem to have been dispatched with bullets through the skull. As we head in that direction, the deposits are getting deeper and more complicated. No longer do we have horses laid quite neatly nose to tail. We've got a greater jumble of horses laying 2 abreast, often on top of one another. And the archaeologists are just working at the moment to try and unpick all of that, work out which leg goes with which animal. We've also had a couple of very interesting finds up there. We've got a cannonball embedded inside the chest cavity of a horse. And we've also got smaller details like a French musket ball embedded in the shoulder of another horse. Presumably that was a wound that it sustained that led to it being brought here and then dispatched. The musket ball itself we think is French, and so this may be a horse involved in the charge of the Union Brigade towards D'Erlon's Corps, which is over the ridge in that direction. So you can see the cannonball down here. That's a 6-pounder cannonball. And the ribs are overlaying it, and you can see some of them are broken as well. There's, as you can see, a real mix of horse bones in this area, but if you follow it up in that direction, you can see a large skull over there. That's the skull that belongs to this animal. Its rear end is heading off in that direction, and its rear leg here. I'm kneeling here on top of another horse, which we're partially through the way exposing. There's another one here, there's another one through here. This is the one laying on its back that's got the musket ball embedded in its shoulder. And as we head in that direction, we've got even more a tangled mess of limbs at the moment that we haven't yet unpicked. But this cannonball has maybe hit from the front or the rear of the horse where there was muscle to slow it down. And it's probably at the end of its long range, so most of the energy is spent. If this was a close range impact, it would have gone straight through the horse. Exactly what nationality this horse is, we're not entirely sure. It's possible it was killed somewhere nearby and dragged over here to be buried in the pits alongside all of these other horses. It's also perfectly possible that it was one of the Union Brigade horses there that was on the receiving end of the Guard artillery, brought up in the later stages of the battle after 6 p.m. when La Haye-Saint fell. The Guard artillery was brought up very close to the Allied line, and some overshot came in this direction, and we know that because we found another 6-pounder cannonball in the bottom of the orchard in that direction, maybe 100 metres. So that horse may have been on the receiving end of another 6-pounder from the Guard artillery. Alternatively, it could be a French horse that received some British artillery that was running wild around here, having lost its rider and been brought into the farm. So we can see the tangle of horses up there and the twisted positions they're laid in. One is in fact laid on its back, its legs splayed out. With the cannonball in the chest cavity, it's a real visceral reminder of the suffering that animals underwent during this battle. We often, of course, think of the humans involved, the human combatants actively taking a part in the battle. But the animals, for the most part, although they were trained, were unwitting participants in the battle. And a lot of them have met a very sad and unfortunate end. Those who were of no longer any use were brought here and dispatched. This may be where the wounded horses were collected in order to be dispatched. But we do know that they've also been utilised for certain purposes, so their horseshoes have been removed, for example. Those horseshoes could be reused elsewhere. We've got no real evidence as to what nationality these horses were either. There's no buckles or badges or bridles still intact. The only thing that we do have associated with the horse is this skeleton behind me. Underneath the chin, there's an iron ring, and that's probably the remnants of a rope that was passed over the head of the horse as it was led into this ditch before being dispatched. Of course, this is a very grisly end for the horses, but we also have to think about there were humans involved in this process, bringing in horse after horse after horse and dispatching them with a pistol shot to the head. That itself is an absolutely dreadful task to comprehend. And really this whole assemblage just reinforces that war is hell statement, because this is the aftermath. We've got the human remains down there, we've got the discarded equipment, and we've got all the animals which have been caught up in the battle.
If you'd like to see more episodes like this, you can make it happen.
Our new target is to reach 15,000 worldwide supporters on Patreon by the end of 2025. This will enable us to continue expanding the Time Team world. Enjoy front row seats for the greatest show on Earth and under it.
As captivating as the history of this site is, we mustn't forget the incredible work that the Archaeological project is doing in supporting service personnel. And it was inspiring to hear what some of this year's participants made of what they were doing.
My favourite thing so far since being here has been getting into the trench and finding stuff, and out with the metal detector and finding stuff from the Battle of Waterloo that represents my time serving with the Grenadier Guards. That the battle, one of the battles that my regiment got from this place to the Battle of Waterloo. So it's been really fantastic.
My favourite experience so far is meeting everyone. So I'm here to help with my mental health recuperation and getting to know the Dutch Navy and even other members of like the UK Army and the Navy and the US veterans that are over here. We all have similar experiences, and it's really cool to know that we're not here on our own. We have experience to share with one another. And also uncovering the skeletons, that's a pretty unique experience for an aircraft engineer to do. I've met a lot of people and broke down a lot of my anxiety. Even sitting in front of a camera doing an interview is not like me at all, but this has pushed me to break down my anxiety and just push myself to do something new. So I'm hoping that I can do that a lot more when I go home.
It's taken me out of my comfort zone, because I usually refuse to do stuff like this, but now I've took that step out of my comfort zone. I've realised that I can come away and meet new people that I don't know and be comfortable around like-minded people like the staff and the other people that got the opportunity to come to this. And I know in the future, if anybody else gets the chance, I'll advise them to get on the course and get over it, because it's a lovely location and everything's brilliant. The staff are fantastic and nothing's ever too much, and all the professionals here as well, they absolutely love what they do and they teach you everything you need to know, and there's no questions too much, and they go the extra mile as well, and I appreciate it a lot.
What's really key about this dig, it's a recipe of all the key components of well-being and mental health. So being physically active, learning new skills, giving to others, being mindful, and caring about folk and caring about yourself. So this delivers that in spades, excuse the pun. So this has been a really good dig this year for the group gelling together, the sense of camaraderie and belonging that is fostered, which is reminiscent of what you get in the services. I think people really appreciate that quality, so the level of confidence and trust that is quickly developed is amazing. That becomes the vehicle for a magical experience, again, that meets all the well-being needs, and really makes a marked difference and a meaningful difference in their lives, going way beyond the dig. So that's really what this is about.
Tony, it's been a long 3 days. We've covered nearly 250 miles, and Harry's been hearing from Abby with regards to the reason we've been raising these funds. But with regards to the archaeology of Waterloo, the iconic battle, can you tell us about what you've been doing in the past few years, and then a little bit about this particular season?
Yeah, with pleasure. And when you start talking about distances in Waterloo, I immediately think about marching and advances and retreats. And
I'd rather have wheels.
It's experimental archaeology almost. But yeah, so we started here in 2015, which obviously was the 200th anniversary. And the aim was to bring military veterans and engage them in archaeology. And so I was heading up the archaeology side of things. And it was, for me, he was a well-established conflict archaeologist. It was a lifetime's ambition. Yeah. It was brilliant. So, but we started out at Hougoumont, which is the farm that Wellington placed on his right. And there were 3 of these, one on the right, one on the left, and one in the middle, just in front of his main line. Mm-hmm. And they acted as strong points, so he put troops in them, and they were fought over throughout the day. La Haye Saints just behind us, it was taken by the French as the evening came.
Is it literally
unfortunately, you can't quite see it, but it's just behind that rise.
Oh, okay.
So we're really close to it. And so we started at Hougoumont, and we did some amazing archaeology. We kind of... It was almost like a crime scene. We found hundreds of musket balls related to the French assaults through the day. And they were fought back. Hougoumont was held by largely British and German troops. And it was just stunning to see what archaeology could do. And obviously metal detectors played an important role. But we had the University of Ghent doing geophysics. We found old brick kilns that were used to create the bricks that Hougoumont was built from, probably in the 15 or 1600s. So, we had the genesis of the farm itself. And what puzzled us was that, given that probably 20,000 people were killed in this horrific battle, and maybe, 5 or 10,000 horses, there were no graves. And we had paintings of graves from the time outside the North Gate. There's a lovely painting. There were 2 actually, one showing burial. I say lovely, but the content isn't great.
Yeah, of course.
And one of cremation. And we were tasked by the local authority to actually test that site, which was then under a car park. And I think we found one small finger bone, absolutely no trace of a mass grave. Very complex archaeology, but it was just the accumulation of activity over the 200 years. So that we started to puzzle about where were the graves, where were the human remains. And it wasn't until we got to Mont Saint-Jean, which is where we're sat now, and it's now a very nice restaurant and brewery.
Yes.
But this was, on the day of the battle, on the 18th of June 1815, this was a farm behind Wellington Centre, and supposedly a safe space.
See, so it wasn't the brewery that drew you here? It was
Believe it or not.
A genuine archaeological question.
Believe it or not, Anthony Martin, who owns this amazing establishment, was very kind and allowed us to do archaeology in literally his back garden. And you can see the original centre of the farm still survives just behind us. But we were metal detecting in this orchard behind us, and we knew from mapping from the time that this was an open field in 1815. And lo and behold, on one occasion, one of our metal detectorists put up a cry and said, "I found a bone." And you think, well, you're a metal detectorist, what are you doing finding bones? But what had happened was he'd detected a deposit of sheet tin with a bone lying on top of it. So our archaeologists sprang into action, and pretty quickly it was quite clear we had human remains. And by the end of that field season in 2019, we'd uncovered 3 amputated human legs, part of at least 1 human arm. They were excavated along with our colleagues at AWAP, who without this project would not be possible. They went to their lab in Brussels, and it was then discovered that there was part of a French musket ball lodged in one of the legs. And of course, at the time, due to medical technology and the nature of the weaponry, the only chance of survival you had really is if you were hitting your extremities. If you were hitting the torso or the head, you were obviously a goner. And the only way to really deal with these soft lead musket balls or cannon shot, which smash bone and damage tissue incredibly badly, is to lop that limb off. And so there were surgeons based in this farm.
So the brewery now is sat on top of this farm that became a medical centre.
Absolutely. And Mick Crumplin, who's an expert in the battlefield surgery of the time, he reckons that in the barn behind us, which is still standing, at least 500 limbs were cut off during the day. There's a description by a soldier in the Scots Greys who visits the courtyard the day after the battle, and he describes a massive mound of arms and legs just lying in the courtyard. Absolutely shocking descriptions. But what we found was that just next to the road here, we had a deliberately dug shallow trench with a flat bottom, in which these limbs had been deposited. And I think it's fairly safe to say that those limbs are some of those that soldier described. This is part of the clear-up after the battle.
Is there any evidence on the bones of the amputation?
There is indeed, and Mick Crumplin had a look very recently at the saw marks, and this is without anaesthetic, no antibiotics afterwards.
And I mean, all at the expense of an individual's ego. People might argue with me on that. But
absolutely, we could go into the rights and wrongs of that over a beer later. But he said that the surgery was incredibly efficient, looking at the saw marks still. And we discovered, and given my place of employment, that at least 20 of those surgeons had some training at Glasgow University. So it's no wonder they were great. But what we don't know is whether the men who lost those legs or arms survived. We don't know that part of the story. But that wasn't all. 2019 was an exciting year as far as that was concerned, and again, despite the disturbing content, we were looking forward to coming back the following year, but then COVID hit, so we had to take 2 years out, and we returned to this site in 2022, and at that point we discovered in the same trench, this long trench running alongside the road, 3 horses that we fully excavated.
Right.
They had suffered terrible wounds to their legs.
Okay.
And each and every one of them had been shot in the head with a musket ball.
Okay.
So
put out
of their misery, and hundreds of horses. You know, and as I said, probably 5,000 to 10,000 horses killed. And what they'd done is they'd walked them into this trench, got them in position, and then shot them in the head. And they just dropped nose to tail, one after the other. We then found a 4th, and then we also then. So much stuff in this trench. We also then encountered a full human skeleton, and interestingly, that was on the other side of the amputated bones. So all the horses were to the north, amputated bones, and then a human skeleton. And being an old prehistorian, I immediately started to think about structured deposition, about the fact that this was a deliberate policy, keeping animals and humans humans apart. And so we returned this year, and that skeleton was really important because it's only the second human burial discovered on the battlefield by archaeologists.
Second only?
Second only.
With that many, the level of...
With maybe as many as 20,000 dead. So what happened to the dead? But what we've discovered this time around are more horses, no more skeletons, no more human skeletons, a lot more amputated limbs, and a butchered cow. So this is evidence of the clean-up of the battle. And as an archaeologist, I'm really intrigued by the concept and reality of aftermath, and here we've got it. Now, when we talk about the absence of graves, during COVID I went away and did a lot of research on eyewitness accounts of visitors, and worked with colleagues in Belgium and Germany. And what became clear was that there was the old story that the bones were dug up in the decades after the battle, ground down and used as fertiliser in Scotland and England. And there is certainly, that was certainly happening. We don't have any direct evidence for that at Waterloo, but that was battlefield sites like Lutzen from 1814. But then in the Belgian archives, it became clear what was found was documentary evidence of the removal in the 1830s of bones from Waterloo Battlefield to be ground down to create a substrate as a filter, charred bone, through which sugar beet would be filtered after being melted to produce the white sugar that we know today. And after the battle, the agricultural cycle here changes from mixed wheat, grass, rye, corn, to almost a monoculture of sugar beet. And it becomes a huge industry, and there is still one of these factories, refineries, standing in Waterloo town, which is now a hotel. And so it does appear that the battlefield continued to be used and was exploited, and to us today it seems and indeed the legal authorities here were totally against it. You know, farmers could go to jail and be fined for illegally digging up the bones to sell them. But the point is that yes, that happened, but I think we can jump very quickly to the conclusion that there are no human burials or mass graves on Waterloo, which makes this so significant. And I think we've got a pretty good idea where at least 2 more mass graves are. But I've just finished on saying that this is a unique archaeological feature. Yes, we've got human burials, we've got horse burials, and human burials and horses together on other Napoleonic battlefields. Nowhere do we have this combination of human burial, the dumping of amputated limbs, the putting down of injured horses, and now butchery waste. It's an absolutely unique complex, thus far. So I've never seen anything like it in all the years I've been doing this.
Fantastic. And that is fascinating, and what with our understanding of the ride and the influence that our fundraising will have, and the incredible patrons who have supported us on making Time Team happen, but also sponsoring us on this ride. It's an absolute pleasure not only to facilitate training and rehabilitation with ex-service personnel, but also support such a fascinating archaeological dig. And I think we can only wish you the best with you.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your support, and it's been great talking to you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses, and behind-the-scenes insights.